So I'm going to tell my story a little bit backwards. I'm going to start with why I do it. And here's the first reason why I do it. Joyce is one of 17 girls who just graduated from St. Francis Secondary School for Girls in Naivasha, Kenya. These pictures were all taken on graduation day in November. Look at those beautiful faces. These girls are so happy. And when I was taking their pictures, I interviewed them, and I said, tell me where you see yourselves in 10 years. And they said, I want to be a doctor. I want to be a lawyer. I want to be an architect. I want to be an engineer. 3 of them said they wanted to be pilots. These are just wonderful, wonderful girls whom I met in 2007 when they were 4 years younger than now. Look at those happy faces. So I'm going to leave Molly up there for a minute with her beautiful smile and now tell you a little bit about my story. 12 years ago, I retired from teaching high school math at Menlo Atherton High School at my husband's behest. And 6 months later, he died. And I thought I'd been hit with a sledgehammer. It took me a while, like a long time, to assimilate what had happened to me. And during that time, I, of course, did a lot of thinking, and I began to think about daydreams that I had had for years that I had kind of ignored. Did you ever do that? So but they came to my mind now, and I would find myself daydreaming of teaching math to girls in Africa. And I said to my friends, you know, I really want to do this, but I don't know how. And one of my friends said, well, why don't you email my friend, Father Karidi in Kenya, who, by the way, may be watching this. I hope he is. And I think some of these girls may be watching. They didn't know I was going to show their pictures, but I think they're there. So they're probably just blown away by now. Anyway, so I emailed Father Karidi, and we emailed back and forth. And the upshot was that in 2005, I went to Kenya originally for 2 weeks to observe and see how I might be of service there. I wanted to teach math to girls, but I said I didn't know. So I went there, and I went to the high school that was run by the local Catholic parish. It was a co-ed boarding high school. Most high schools in Kenya are boarding high schools. I saw really good teachers. I saw great math teachers. I saw other good teachers. I got to know the teachers, and suddenly it hit me. If I were to come there for a year, as was my plan, and take a job, one of them would lose a job. And I said, I can't do that. And I was really bummed because I really wanted to do it. Within a few days, I began to notice that there were no girls in the first 2 classes, what we would call freshman and sophomore. There were only girls in the last 2 classes. When I asked about it, they said, we're phasing the girls out of this school. And I said, you're what? You're phasing the girls out? How can you do that? Well, we've had some pregnancies. Every year there have been 3 and 4 pregnancies. We can't have our parents sending their daughters to us and we send them home pregnant. We have to separate the boys and the girls. Okay, I could understand that. And I said, and what are the girls going to do? Well, the community has donated some land and we hope to build a school for the girls. Great, I said, when is that going to happen? We don't have any money. Oh. And then I said what I never thought I would have imagined myself saying, you don't really need me to come here and teach math. You need me to go home and see if I can raise some money to build this girls' school. Before I left, I heard other things, and one of them was something about sending students home for fees. And I asked what that was about. And they said that when the kids come, the parents have cobbled together a little bit of money. This is a poor country. Schools, none of the schools are free. No high school is free there. So they bring a little bit of money and they promise I'll pay more, thus and such. And most of the time they do it, but sometimes the parents can't. And so the children get sent home. The teachers have to be paid, the food has to be bought, they have to have the money. And there were some 6 or 7 students they thought probably wouldn't be coming back. So I asked if I could interview them. So I talked to each student, asked them what they wanted to do. Mostly, they wanted to be in school. And I said, I don't know whether I can find anybody. I don't make any promises, but I'll see if I can find a sponsor for you. And so I went home. I walked in the door, Can you imagine coming back home after such an exciting trip, and the first thing I did was call my daughter, right? Hi, Susan, I'm home, da-da-da. What was it, Mom? What was it like? And I told her about the 6 students I had interviewed. And she said, well, what would it cost to sponsor a student, Mom? And I said, $650 a year. And she said, oh, Tommy and I'll do that. Well, I was pretty excited. Thank you. So finished that, talked to my son, same story. What does it cost? $650. Oh, Janet and I'll do that. Wow, I hadn't been home 10 minutes. I had 2 sponsors. It got my attention, as you can imagine. So, of course, I'm still just high from my trip, and I'm calling my friends, telling them all about it. And one of my friends said, well, Margo, how are you going to raise this money? And I said, I don't know. That didn't occur to me. I just said I'd do it. So I said, well, maybe I could use some of my tutoring money, because now that I'm retired, I tutor students at home. I could use some of that, but I don't know. So finished that conversation. 3 minutes later, the phone rings, and this is my friend. She says, I'll match everything that you give up to $1,000. I'd been home a half an hour. I had $2,000 plus 2 sponsors. That was just the beginning of kind of miraculous things. I mean, I never knew how they happened. The next year, when I was in Kenya, and we were building, well, I'm going to move this on so you can see. Oh, here's a miracle. Well, one of the ways that I raised money was people gave coffees, and they invited their friends to come and talk, and I brought slides and talked about the school and the need for it and so on. At one coffee, one of the early ones, a woman came to me and said that she coaches 6th grade girls in basketball. And she said, every year I give them a project. These girls are girls of privilege, and I want them to understand that with privilege comes responsibility, and I want your project to be their project. She explained that they were doing a hoopathon. They were getting their sponsors and so on, throwing hoops, They were doing a hoopathon. She said, we'll do it in July. And I said, wow, that's great. And I'm thinking maybe $400 or $500 that they would earn. I mean, these are 6th grade girls, right? You can see them. So the next summer, when I went back, I'm sitting in Father Caridi's office reading my email, and here's an email from Rebecca Bloom, the coach, and she said, we had the hoopathon, we don't have quite all the money yet, but we think it's about $13,000. And I was like, whoa! Not only that, the next year they did it again. They did just a little bit more. Now they're kind of growing up. These girls are in high school now. They're doing crafts things. They're very artistic. They're selling them on the street corners. They're selling them in the farmer's market. They're selling them to their aunts and uncles and neighbors and whoever else they can coerce into that. These girls have raised over $40,000 for our school. Just high school girls. Yeah, they're fabulous. So I went back that second year, that was in 2006. When I had left the previous year, as Father Caridi was driving me to Nairobi, he said, oh, right over there is the land that the people have given. And I saw cows and goats and sheep and some zebras. They call them zebras, we call them zebras, grazing away on an empty field. When I came back the next year, I had raised enough money so we could fence the field, and those are thorn plants. They're now like this, and the thorns are that long. Believe me, they are formidable. We broke ground. There's Father Caridi and me. They were quite amazed that I knew what to do with that pickaxe or whatever it is. I do. So and you can see in the background there are stones, the beginnings of the buildings, many, many more stones than that. So I went back. I go there every summer during the time that I'm not tutoring here, from mid-June to mid-August, and I do get to teach there. I don't take over somebody's job, but we share, and so on. So the first class graduated this past November. This is this picture that I took of that same field last November. There's our school. Complete, it has 8 classrooms, it has 2 science labs, it has a library, a computer lab, a beautiful big multi-purpose dining hall, dormitories for 320 girls, and a barn with 2 cows. And by the way, the pasture for the cows, The pasture for the cows is the soccer field, so it has to be kind of cleaned off before they can play soccer. These are those first 18 girls that I met in 2007. I had to go back there and watch them graduate. It was a big deal to go this November, but I had to see them. I took this picture before I left in August, 240 girls. Now, the school year has begun in January, so we now have about 280 girls. I want to stop here for a minute and tell you what happens to girls who don't get to go to school. And there are many, many of them. There are government high schools that can accommodate about 40% of the students who pass the exam, the national exam they have to take at the end of the 8th grade. Those are the best performers, of course. Then all the other 60% have to scrabble, and of course there aren't enough schools. There aren't enough private schools, and the parents don't have the money. So what happens is they may end up as what's called a house help. They work in the houses and take care of the kids and do all the hard work. They may end up on the streets. A lot of women end up on the streets. Or they may end up in a marriage that their parents have arranged. They may be married to a man who's 50 years old and already has 2 wives. They're going to be the one who has to go out to the river to get the water, has to go to the forest to get the fuel, has to till the soil, warm the old man's bed, and have babies maybe at 15 or 16 years old, long before their bodies are ready. So going to high school, the privilege of going to high school is really special. These girls all know the alternatives to going to high school, and maybe, if they're lucky, going on to the university. These girls are really motivated. These are the middle-level performers from the primary elementary schools. Of our 17 girls who graduated last November, every single one of them passed the national exam. Every one of them. 14 of them qualified to go to the university, and now my job is to figure out how we're going to pay for that. But I've never had a plan to start with. It just all kind of happened with the miracles. Oh, there's one I forgot to tell you. That first year, the second year when I went back and we were just starting to build the school, I was there with the pickaxe. Father Creedy came to me and said, I think we can get the school ready to open in January when the school's traditionally open, but we're going to need about $10,000 more. And I'm saying, I don't know where the $10,000 is coming from, but okay. Within a week, I had had an email from home telling me that someone had made an anonymous donation of $10,000. You know? So this school just happened. You know, I'm not a magician, but a lot of times it seemed like magic, believe me. So there's supposed to be, there's one more picture, but it's not showing. I just want to say, it was a picture of these last girls. Okay, we'll look at Joyce again. I'll tell you what I've learned. Oh, here it is. There they are. Those wonderful girls. By the way, not one of them told me that she wanted to go out fetching water and wood. So I want to tell you what I've learned in this odyssey that I've been on. The first thing I've learned is that age doesn't matter. I was 68 when I went to Kenya to begin with in 2005. I just turned 75 2 years ago. And you know, thank you. Thank you. I feel like I could go on for another 25 years. Just like this whole project has given me such a life, so much more than I could ever have imagined. The second thing I've learned is that one person can do a lot. I didn't do this by myself. You can imagine, I pulled in everybody. I have a board for my foundation that we had to establish called Can You Help? By the way, can you help? We have a website, which was another one of those magical things that turned up. Our website name is canyouhelp.us. Can you help us? So I didn't do this by myself. People came. One more magic thing that I have to tell you about is early on when the money started coming in. It was coming through my church. And they said to me, Margo, you have to have your own foundation. We're just volunteers. We can't do all this. There are too many checks. And I said, I don't know how to get a foundation. The next thing I knew, someone said, well, I have a connection with a law firm on the peninsula. Let me see what we can do. And before I knew it, Wilson Sonsini, one of the biggest law firms in the peninsula, was doing our legal work pro bono. So when I say magic, that's the kind of magic that happens. So the second thing I learned is one person can do a lot, but I couldn't do it by myself. I could have said, this is a huge problem, and I can't do anything about it. Or I could have said, this is a great big problem. Maybe I could deal with this much of it. The third thing that I learned has just fallen out of my head. It'll come to me in just a second. Wow, I didn't think this was going to happen. God, I'm sorry. It's gone. It's gone. Well, but I'm going to say one more thing. When I say age, it doesn't matter. Sometimes it does. I don't play the age card often, but sometimes that happens. Oh, I remember what it was. and that is, if you feel something tugging at your heart, listen up. Listen up. Don't wait till you're 68 like I did. Listen up. And when you step on that path for the first time, just be prepared that it may be a much longer path than you ever imagined and infinitely more rewarding. Thank you.